Hi guys, good morning. We are starting a new unit today on expressions, and today we're going to be evaluating expressions. So if you haven't already, you should have received a blue assignment sheet from whoever is subbing the class today. If you didn't get that yet, just let them know that you need it. At the end of the lesson, I will show you the table of contents so you know where to file everything. All right, let's get started. Before we start evaluating expressions, we need to know what an expression is. Feel free to pause the video if you need to get your page set up. All right, expression. So an expression is a mathematical phrase that contains terms, although an expression can just be one term, of variables and constants. And the important thing to know is that expressions do not have equal signs. So this whole unit's going to be on expressions. The next unit will be on equations. Equations do have equal signs. So an expression is like a phrase in language arts. Like a phrase compared to a sentence is like an expression compared to an equation. All right. So let's take a look at just a generic expression, and we'll talk about the parts of it just so that we understand all the vocabulary that's happening here. Okay. So this whole thing is an expression. Now, these two things are considered terms. Terms are separated by addition and subtraction symbols, okay? So this right here is a constant. And this right here is a variable term because it has a variable in it, it has a D in it. And when you're looking closer at the variable term here, actually let me go off to the side so we can talk about it some more. Here, let's do 4D right here so that we can break this down even further. Okay, this is your variable, obviously. And this right here is your coefficient. I want to make sure I point out what these things are because I'm going to talk about them a lot, and I don't want you to be confused as to what I'm talking about. So the coefficient is always working with your variable. It's like a coworker, okay? And it basically tells us how many times the variable is going to be multiplied by itself, or how many times you're going to multiply the variable. So whatever D is, we're multiplying it by 4, basically. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at how we evaluate expressions. Start with something basic. Here's the expression 6 minus 3x. Okay, and we're going to evaluate for x is equal to 2, x is equal to negative 3, x is equal to 0.5, and x is equal to negative 2.5. Okay, so we're going to substitute all 4 of those things in to see what we get. Now sometimes you'll hear me refer to it as plugging in, kind of like a plug. You stick it in the equation or the expression. So let's see how we do this. Let's start with that first one where x is equal to 2. So we're going to write the equation. Now when we substitute in or evaluate an expression, we don't just put the 2 here. If we put the 2 there, it looks like 60 minus 32. But when you look back at the expression, this is 3 times x. This is multiplication here, and we want to preserve that. So we are going to want to put everything in parentheses when we evaluate expressions. Otherwise, you're going to get, you'll see, it can get pretty sticky pretty quick if you don't put it in parentheses. And then we just use the order of operations here. All right, so when we substitute, or when we evaluate that expression for 2, we get 0. Now let's do 3. Again, if I just plug in negative 3 there without parentheses, that looks like 3 minus 3, but it is not. This is multiplication, so it needs to be in parentheses. Here's another mental shift that I want you to get used to. I don't want you to see this as minus 3. I want you to see this as negative 3, okay? So when the sign in front of any number like this, just assume that that is a negative 3, okay? If this was negative 5, then, or minus 5, then we would consider that negative 5. All right, so negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. So positive 9. Now you've just saved yourself a step, because if you ignored the subtraction sign and you did 3 times negative 3, that'd be negative 9. So you'd be subtracting a negative 9, which is the same as adding. So you saved yourself a step, and we want these things to be nice and clean. We don't want a bunch of symbols if we don't need them. So subtracting a negative is a lot of symbols. You'd have to have parentheses there. It's messy. So let's just keep it simple. All right, so that one is 15. Let's try 0.5. Okay, you have 6 here. And then 3 times 0.5 is 1.5. And like, I know I'm gonna beat a dead horse here. If you didn't put parentheses here, this would look like 30.5. And that's not what it is, it's multiplication. So you can see why it is super important to make sure that you have those parentheses around there. So that is 4.5. All right, last one. Okay. So again, we want to think of this as negative 3. Oops. And this would be, so negative 3 times negative 2.5 is going to be a positive 7.5. And then we can just add these. This will be 13.5. All right, I'm gonna have you practice this now. I'm gonna have you practice it with an expression that has an exponent. I'm gonna come over here so we have room. So x is equal to 1, x is equal to 3, x is equal to 6, and x is equal to -2. Go ahead and pause the video and try this real quick, and then I'll go over it with you. All right, let's take a look at that first one. If you're always putting it in parentheses, you're gonna be fine. It's when you don't put things in parentheses that really should have been put in parentheses that you get into a mess. Now, does it matter if one is in parentheses? Not really, okay? You're gonna get the same answer whether it was in parentheses or not. So there might be times when you can make a judgment call and say, okay, I know that 1 squared is gonna be 1 whether there's parentheses or not, okay? So for this one, if you look at that and you're like, I don't need the parentheses, that's really okay. So 1 squared is 1 minus 5. 1 minus 5 is -4. And let's do 3. 3 doesn't need to be in parentheses either, because if it was a -3, absolutely you'd want it in parentheses. And if there was something going on in front of it, you'd want it in parentheses too. But in this case, you don't need it. So this is 9 minus 5, which is 4. 6 squared minus 5. 36 minus 5. 31. Kind of out of room. Let me go underneath. So I'm going to put this in parentheses. Okay, now I purposely put this in parentheses because it is negative. If you don't put it in parentheses, you're going to get the answer wrong. Because if you don't put it in parentheses, you'll square the 2 and not the negative, and it will become -4. But it's the whole variable x that's being squared, and in this case, that whole thing is -2. So this is going to be +4 minus 5, which is -1. All right, so I feel like you have the gist of this. I do want to put one little note here on the bottom. Okay. Use parentheses. To evaluate expressions. That is the biggest problem that I see, is people don't use parentheses. So make sure you do that. All right, so your notes are ready to be filed. You have a homework in Otis. The homework is probably not going to take you very long. You are probably going to finish significantly early today. So I know that in 6th grade, you guys learned how to combine like terms. So if you would like to get a head start on that, next to the door are 2 folders stapled to the wall, next to where it says like Math 7 days of the week, and then Accelerated Math 7 days of the week. There's just 2 folders to the left of that. Inside those folders are combining like terms coloring sheets, so you can solve the problems and color the pictures. Some people really like them. So if you are wanting to get a head start on that, you can. Just make sure that you are not being disruptive and that you've gotten everything finished up for the day before you do anything else. And make sure you follow the rules of the sub, whatever they are asking you to do. If they don't want you to do something or something is okay, that's fine. All right, here is the table of contents, so you can get your stuff filed. Percents test, I'll hand that back to you tomorrow. There's still one person that hasn't taken it yet, but I really want you to have that back. So leave spaces for your trimester final too. I'm gonna be giving you all the parts of the trimester final back all stapled together. I don't know if I'm gonna get it back to you tomorrow, but definitely Monday, if not tomorrow. So leave a space for that as well. And then this is our new unit, your assignment sheet, evaluating expressions, notes, and your homework. Email me if you have any questions, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day, you guys.